Hello, fans. Welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me for yet another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Logan Purcell will be joining me in a few minutes. We're going to break down the usual bunch for you today, but there's nothing usual of what's been going on in sports this week. We're going to talk about the conference finals in the NBA, keep you updated with what's going on over there. I will also keep you updated with soccer news, the Euro 2020 tournament taking place this summer. We're officially in the knockout stages of that tournament. I'll also keep you updated with MLS highlights, most notably with the Columbus Crew and FC Cincinnati, the two Ohio-based teams. We're going to get into the WNBA a little bit as well. And then, of course, you can't have a Cleveland sports show in the summertime without talking about the Indians. Logan and I will cover all of it for you. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show right here with Darius Sethna on NordoniaHills.news. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Once again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me for another episode of the podcast. We are locked in on sports all day, every day here on the Cleveland Sports Show, and we have another exciting week of action to break down for you. But first, you know how we get things started every week right here on the podcast, our sports fact of the day. And Cavs fans, this is a sports fact of the day that you're really going to like. Today is June 26th, 2021, and on this day, 18 years ago, in 2003, the NBA draft from Madison Square Garden in New York City. With the first pick in that draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers selected a prospect from St. Vincent St. Mary High School right here in Akron, Ohio, by the name of LeBron James. And I don't even have to say any more, do I? I feel like we have everything we need with those two words. LeBron James, that's right. On this day, 18 years ago, LeBron James was picked with the first overall selection by the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron would play for the Cavs from 2003 to 2010 and then returned to the team in 2014 where he won that infamous championship in 2016. And 2018 would be his last year with the Cavs. He is now a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. But hey, we will see what if maybe LeBron chooses to come back to the Cavs. You never know. But other notable picks in the 2003 NBA draft include Carmelo Anthony, who was selected by the Denver Nuggets with the third overall pick. Anthony, one of the greatest scorers in the history of the NBA, now a member of the Portland Trail Blazers. Chris Bosh was selected with the fourth overall pick, came out of Georgia Tech, played for the Toronto Raptors. Dwayne Wade was selected by the Miami Heat with the fifth overall pick. Dwayne Wade, arguably, in my opinion, I think most people's opinions, let's be honest here, the most iconic player to ever wear a Heat uniform. When you talk about representing Heat culture and representing the city of Miami and being a sports icon in that city, I don't think you can get any higher than Dwayne Wade went in that city. A phenomenal career for all of these players. And that is the 2003 NBA draft for you. With the first pick, the Cavs select LeBron James on this day, June 26th, back in 2003. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about soccer news and the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament. And you don't get confused when I say 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. The tournament was canceled. It would have been last year. Now that COVID is not as prominent as it was at this time last year, the tournament is been scheduled for this summer, and we are finally in the knockout stages of the tournament. That's right, final 16 teams are now battling it out. These are all European teams. This is basically like a World Cup, but just the continent of Europe. Now, the matches that will be taking place in the round of 16, they begin this weekend. In fact, they begin today. Wales will be going up against Denmark at noon today. That is kickoff about half an hour from now. Italy will be going up against Austria today at 3 p.m. Tomorrow, the knockout stage continues with the Netherlands taking on Czech Republic at noon. And then this is going to be a fun one, ladies and gentlemen. Belgium going up against Portugal tomorrow at 3 o'clock p.m. Cristiano Ronaldo, the leading goal scorer in this tournament, with 5 goals in the tournament thus far. However, he is going up against a well-oiled machine in this Belgium squad, a very talented team that is representing Belgium. So this is going to be a great matchup. Will Cristiano Ronaldo be able to carry his nation past this juggernaut of a Belgium squad? We'll find out tomorrow at 3 p.m. Sunday, to be more specific, is that tomorrow. And Belgium going up against Portugal in that round of 16 matchup. Another great matchup that we'll have is Croatia going up against Spain. Spain, a very young, talented squad. Croatia, who made the World Cup final in 2018, finished second place in that tournament, losing to the champions France. That'll be a great game. Croatia-Spain Monday at noon in that round of 16 match. Speaking of France, they'll be going up against Switzerland on Monday, the 28th as well at 3 p.m. That'll be a rematch of a 2014 FIFA World Cup group stage game between the two. France won that game by a final score of 5-2. And additionally, another match in the final day of the round of 16, to be more specific for you. This is going to be a great one. This is the one I have marked on my calendar, ladies and gentlemen. England going up against Germany. Now, Germany made it by the skin of their teeth to get in the knockout round, but you can never count out the Germans. They are a very talented team, very well coached. But this England team, they made the semifinals of the World Cup 4 years ago, and they've looked good in this tournament so far. So we'll see. It'll be live from Wembley Stadium in London on Tuesday, the 29th of June at noon. And then the final round of 16 matchup of the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament will be Sweden taking on Ukraine. That'll be the 29th as well at 3 p.m. And when we look at the standings, Italy finished top of Group A. Now, there are a total of 6 groups in the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament, 4 teams per group. Now, in Group A, as I mentioned, Italy in first place. They had 3 games, won all their 3 games. They looked very impressive in this tournament. Wales come in at second place in Group A, 4 points for them. A win, a draw, and a loss was enough to get them to the knockout stage. Then Switzerland finished in third place. They also have had the same record as Wales, 1-1-1. However, with that goal differential, that puts them in third place instead of second. In Group B, Belgium, 9 points thanks to 3 wins for them. Denmark and Finland finished second and third respectively. Denmark finished with 3 matches played, obviously, 1 win, 2 losses, for Denmark. Group C, the Netherlands, with 3 matches played and 3 wins. They get 9 points on the board. Austria come in at second place. They had 3 matches played, 2 wins, 1 loss for them. The Ukraine finished in third place in Group C. They had 1 win and 2 losses, but it was still enough to get them, help them progress to the knockout stages. And in Group D, England had 2 wins and 1 draw, but it was enough for them to get first in the group with 7 points. They finished with 7 points in Group D. Croatia, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, but that does not even speak dividends to how talented of a team this is. We'll see what they can do in the knockout stages. But as of right now, they progress thanks to a second-place finish in Group D. And in Group E, Sweden finished in first place. They had 7 points thanks to 2 wins and 1 draw. Spain had 1 win and 2 draws to get them 5 points in Group E. And then in Group F, which is the so-called Group of Death, because 3 of the 4 teams are European heavyweights. We're talking about France, Germany, Portugal, and Hungary. Now, France, Germany, and Portugal are those 3 heavyweights, with Hungary being the outlier. And this group shaped up pretty well in favor of the French. They had 5 points to finish Group F. They top the group. Germany come in at second place with 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss for 4 points. Portugal comes in with an identical record as Germany, 1-1 and 1, also for 4 points. Now, France, finishing with those 5 points, are the lowest ranking first place team in this tournament in terms of points. They only have 5 points. All the other teams who finished first in their respective groups have at least 7 points. So maybe this is a good luck of the draw for France. We'll see what they do against Switzerland. Once again, that matchup between France and Switzerland, Monday, June 28th at 3 p.m. And now it's time to move to MLS soccer, and most notably, the defending MLS Cup champions, the Columbus Crew, who only have had 1 game in between our 2 episodes this week, and it was a game against the Philadelphia Union. It was a road game in Philly, and the home team won this game. That's right. Philadelphia Union defeat the Columbus Crew by a final score of 1-0. This was this past Wednesday, the 23rd, in Philadelphia. A 24th minute goal by Jamiro Monteiro for Philadelphia. It gave them the 1-0 lead, and Columbus were never able to capitalize. They had all the time in the world. They had the rest of the first half of a 45-minute half, 24th minute to the 45th minute, weren't able to score, and then weren't able to score for the entirety of the second half. So the Philadelphia Union hold on and get a critical win. This is a big blow for Columbus, especially having just come off a big win against Chicago, a 2-0 victory for them. They were not able to sustain their winning ways against Philadelphia. They lost that game this past Wednesday, 1-0. However, the Crew do have a chance to mend the wounds here against Austin. They will play tomorrow at 8 p.m. That'll be another road game for the Columbus Crew. After that game tomorrow, the Crew will have a few days off. Saturday, July 3rd, will be their next game. They'll be going up against the New England Revolution. That's a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Final matchup in the MLS. After that game against New England, Friday, July 9th, Ohio soccer fans, mark your calendars for Friday, July 9th, because at 7:30 p.m., we have the Battle of Ohio, MLS style. FC Cincinnati will be hosting the Columbus Crew. That'll be a fun game to watch. That'll be Friday, July 9th at 7:30. But as of right now, standings in terms for the Crew. Despite the loss to Philadelphia this week, the Crew are still within playoff contention in the MLS. In the Eastern Conference, they rank 5th place. They have 9 matches. They've had 9 matches played so far. 4 wins, 2 draws, 3 losses for the Crew. They have a combined total of 14 points. They are tied for 4th place with New York City FC, who currently hold the 4th spot in the MLS's Eastern Conference. And speaking of the Eastern Conference, we're going to stick with our another Ohio team, FC Cincinnati, who right now continue to struggle. However, this past Wednesday, they did get a very much needed win. This was FC Cincinnati's first win in a while. This was actually the last time FC Cincinnati didn't lose a game. It was April 17th when they tied Nashville 2-2. So this was a big deal for Cincinnati, and they achieved that 1-0 win and it was on the road nonetheless, thanks to a goal in the 50th minute by Alvaro Barreal, and FC Cincinnati get a much-needed victory. They're only their 2nd victory on the season thus far. However, FC Cincinnati have another game tonight, a road match against Toronto FC. That is Game 2 of a 3-game road trip for FC Cincinnati. Cincinnati will conclude their road trip in Houston against the Dynamo Saturday, July 3rd at 8:30 p.m. Then July 9th, as I mentioned, is that Battle of Ohio MLS style. It will be taking place in Cincinnati. FC Cincinnati will be hosting the Columbus Crew. In terms of standings for FC Cincinnati, they are currently in 12th place in the MLS's Eastern Conference. 8 matches played for them thus far, 2 wins, 1 draw, but 5 losses on the season thus far. That's been detrimental to them. They only have 7 points on the season thus far, and they are in 12th place out of 14 in the MLS's Eastern Conference. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to talk about NBA news. We're going to get started with the conference finals. Logan, this has really been an interesting set of conference finals thus far. First, let's start out with the Western Conference Finals. We're going to talk about the LA Clippers and the Phoenix Suns. And the last time we talked, Phoenix was already up 1-0. They had won Game 1, 120-114. And Game 2 was an entirely different story in itself. When you look at it, you can break it down from officiating to the Suns not having Chris Paul to Paul George missing 2 late-game free throws. The Suns won Game 2 in Phoenix by a final score of 104-103 on a buzzer-beating lob from DeAndre Ayton. Logan, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about bad Clippers defense or just better Suns on offense. And then you have Game 3 back in Los Angeles. The Clippers won it 106-92. Paul George in Game 3 back in LA felt the comforts of home. He played very well, 27 points to lead the Clippers in scoring in 43 minutes. Reggie Jackson was fantastic in Game 3, 23 points in 33 minutes. This is a guy, Logan, who I definitely think is going to be getting a lot of offers this summer with how well he's been playing in these playoffs. And from the Suns side in Game 3, Mikal Bridges only 13 points, DeAndre Ayton only 18 points. He was the leading scorer for Phoenix. Chris Paul did return from COVID protocol in Game 3. Kawhi Leonard still not back for the Clippers with that sore right knee. We'll see what happens with him. But Chris Paul has returned 15 points, 12 assists, and 2 rebounds. Devin Booker only 15 points as well. So this was not a great all-around performance for the Suns. You could argue this was their worst performance in these playoffs thus far. So Logan, I want to break it down starting with Game 2. This is a game where I think the Clippers lost it because they had a chance to go up 3, if I'm not mistaken, with those Paul George free throws. George misses both of them, and then the Suns eventually come down with all the officiating. We had so many stoppages with reviewing and everything like that. And then at the end of the day, the Suns got a lob to Ayton. They got it off in time at the buzzer, and that was pretty much the end of that. So when you look at Game 2, Logan, specifically, Paul George did have 26 points in 41 minutes, but he was the only Clipper to score above 20 points. So do you think this is a game that the Clippers blew or the Suns were better at?
Well, I think it could go one of 2 ways. I think, first off, I do want to mention that a lot of the times in the NBA nowadays, if you look at like the quarter-by-quarter scoring, it's like one team will outscore the other by 10, then the next quarter it'll be vice versa.
Right.
You know, it really stayed close. Every single quarter was within 3 points scored.
Yeah.
Difference between the 2 teams. And I think that is just a very entertaining basketball game to watch.
Absolutely, yeah. These have been very entertaining games for sure.
It was a very great game to watch. Now, when you want to talk about whether the Clippers lost it or the Suns won it, I think it was a little bit of both, believe it or not. I think the first 3 quarters, the Clippers kind of lost it a little bit. I mean, they were doing all right, but they didn't really have the momentum. Despite only being down by, I believe, 4 points, the momentum was clearly in the hands of Phoenix at the time, going into the final quarter of play.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, I think they lost the game. But, I mean, personally, that game-winning lob from the inbounds under the basket,
right,
or behind the basket, I think that was the Suns' win. I think it was a gutsy call by Monty Williams, and I think that was an amazing play and a fantastic way to score 2 points with 0.7 seconds to go on the clock. I think that was a gutsy call, and I think in that scenario, the Suns did win this game by taking risks and knowing what their strengths are.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely not going to, take away credit from Monty Williams. To me, he's the coach of the year. He did a phenomenal job revamping the Suns team. That was a very gutsy play, as you mentioned. But you also have to look at it from the other side, because in my opinion, Logan, I really thought the Clippers blew this, because when you're Paul George, there was a stat that I was hearing this week on ESPN. In 100-plus trips that Paul George has taken to the free throw line, where he's had 2 shots, he's only missed both shots once. That was before Game 2. So that's the stat. So when you see Paul George at the free throw line, you're not biting your nails, per se. And the fact that he missed both of them, if he made at one of them, it would have put them up by 1, but he could have put them up 3. That's what we know from those free throws. He misses them both, and then the Clippers come, and then the Suns come down offensively, and that defensive possession from the Clippers that allowed that Ayton dunk, I mean, yeah, you have to give Booker credit for the screen he set, but Ivica Zubac is not a small guy. Ivica Zubac is huge. And the fact that he let DeAndre Ayton go all the way up for a wide-open lob, you couldn't say it was wide open, but come on, Ivica Zubac, it could have been way better defense. So, in my eyes, do you think that the Clippers' defense on that final play was just subpar? Because that's what I thought it was. You can't let Devin Booker, who's way significantly smaller than you, screen you, and then Ayton gets a wide-open lob.
Well, watching the play, which I am doing right now, it does appear that Ivica did make an attempt defensively.
Yeah, he did.
I think one of the things that is worth mentioning is not only the dunk attempt by DeAndre Ayton, but the literally perfect pass made by Jay Crowder.
Yeah, it was a great pass.
Anywhere else.
Yeah.
Just watching, he could not have put it anywhere else. A little bit high and he misses it. You can go either way. I think the defense was subpar, but I do not think it was subpar enough to give them, discredit them in this scenario. So, I do see where you're coming from, but I still think it's going to be a Suns win versus the Clippers loss.
And to credit the Clippers, they did bounce back in a big way in Game 3 in LA, 106-92, the final score from the Staples Center. And as I mentioned, Paul George had a great game, 27 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists as well. Speaking of Ivica Zubac, strong game for him, finished with a double-double, 15 points and 16 rebounds. So, Logan, what were your thoughts on Game 3? Because Chris Paul returned for the Suns from COVID protocol. He looked good. He had a double-double. He had 15 points and 12 assists, but it just wasn't enough. And Devin Booker, who suffered a broken nose in Game 2, had to wear a face mask. So you could kind of tell the Suns were having to establish a rhythm once again, and they played well for the majority of the game, but the Clippers opened it in that third quarter, outscoring Phoenix 34-21. So, Logan, I'll ask you this. What was your takeaway from Game 3? Did this win make you more confident in the Clippers, or are you more confident in the Suns that they didn't get destroyed, they only lost by 14? They had to get Chris Paul back, Devin Booker's hurt, Cameron Payne, who's been a solid backup for the Suns all season long, went down in the first half with an ankle injury. So with this result, the result of Game 3, are you more confident that the Clippers can win this series, or are you more confident in the Suns, knowing that they were kind of dismantled a little bit, only lost by 14?
Well, I think I'm a little bit more confident in the Clippers, I guess, sort of.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I'm not one of those people that has been super impressed with Paul George this postseason. I think he's been good. The only issue, or the complaint I should say, is he hasn't been efficient. We all know Paul George, and at least I know Paul George to be an efficient offensive scorer, a guy that'll go out. Similarly, from a numbers, not exactly a number for number, but relatively similar numbers to Kevin Durant.
Right.
He can go out and take 15 shots and drop 30 points.
Right.
We've seen a Paul George that can score. This isn't Paul George that's scoring 5 points in Game 7. But this isn't the same Paul George. I mean, don't get me wrong. You said 27 points and 15 rebounds. It's a great day.
Yeah.
9 of 26 from the field and 3 of 11 from deep as well.
Right.
Not to mention his 6 turnovers. So I understand he plays 42 minutes, but Reggie Jackson has been a beast this postseason.
Yeah, he's going to get paid.
Almost 18 points a game.
He's going to get paid this offseason for sure.
He has been amazing. Next level. I mean, Reggie Jackson's playing like a better than quality starting point guard in the NBA, if you ask me. I think that the Suns, the problem that I have looking at everything, DeAndre Ayton played 35 minutes. He had 18 points and 9 rebounds. He took 13 shots and made 9 of them. How do you play 35 minutes? Your team is struggling. You're the second best offensive option on your team, let's be honest. Obviously, Devin Booker's number 1, who clearly, as you mentioned, struggled in this one, in 5 of 21 shooting.
Right.
How do you look at Devin Booker, see the fact that he's struggling, and only take 13 shots?
Yeah, I mean...
I don't understand that.
And to me, also, I feel like also for the Suns, I don't think this is a team that relies on, one guy to take all the shots. The reason I believe, Logan, the Suns are the second place in the Western Conference, you have guys like Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges. You have to... I would rather see Devin Booker or Chris Paul try an outside perimeter shot than DeAndre Ayton. You've got guys like Cameron Johnson, Torrey Craig, Cameron Payne as well. These guys can hit their shots. And what you don't want to do, especially at this stage in the playoffs, you don't want to resort to something you haven't done before. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to go hero ball when you know that your team has been successful hitting shots up to this point in the playoffs nonetheless as well. So, and DeAndre Ayton, it's not like he had a horrid game. I see the point what you're making, that DeAndre Ayton should be taking more shots. But also, Logan, don't you think that you have to get the other guys involved as well? Because that's important. Guys like Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, all those guys I was mentioning, they've stepped up to the plate in these playoffs, and they just had an off night. So do you look at that and just say those guys need to get their shots?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a point to make. But another thing I'd like to mention is I'm a little bit disappointed in Monty Williams. Something that wasn't really talked about too much. Chris Paul played 39 minutes in his first game back in the series. He played 39 minutes.
Well, that's because Cameron Payne got hurt too, so don't forget. So they didn't really have a backup point guard.
I mean, for sure, but at the very least, I understand, you might not have a backup point guard, but even if he was to play 30 minutes, that'd be different. And Chris Paul, in this one, like you mentioned earlier, he had a really good game. 15 and 12 isn't bad, but I'm a huge efficiency guy.
Right.
Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I could go out and take 40 shots and hit 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
Anybody could.
Yeah.
So to me, it's more about how efficient are you per shot, right? That's why guys like Kevin Durant are as good as they are.
Right.
Guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo are as highly touted as they are. Chris Paul, for whatever reason, I don't understand this, he's never been a guy that I've considered a high-volume shooter. He's not one of the Kyrie Irvings of the world.
Yeah, no.
I mean, Kyrie Irving will go out and have 50 points, but he'll take 35 shots doing it.
Yeah.
Chris Paul's not that guy.
Right.
Chris Paul's an amazing, amazing point guard, and if he gets a ring this year, he's going to be top 5 all time on my list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's not a scorer. That's not his job. His job is a true facilitating point guard. So the fact that not only does he play 39 minutes, but he also takes 19 shots in his first game back.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit much. I think he should have looked more to facilitate the offense, and he did. 12 assists for sure, but I still think one of the reasons that the other role guys that you're talking about didn't get their shots is because they were eaten up by not only Chris Paul, but also Devin Booker.
Yeah, and
who combined for 40 combined attempts and only hit 10.
Yeah. So, yeah, this will definitely be an interesting Game 4. Now, Game 4 of this series between the Phoenix Suns and the LA Clippers will be tonight from the Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Will we head back to Phoenix with this series tied at 2, or will the Suns have a commanding 3-1 lead with a chance to close out the Clippers on their home court in Game 5? We will see. But, Logan, I want to get your thoughts on Game 4 here, because this is a pretty big game for both teams. Phoenix, they obviously, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, they want to show that they can play better at this stage. They want to get a significant grip on this series. And the LA Clippers, to me, I think if they lose tonight, this series is going to be over in the most in 6. I don't think if the Clippers lose tonight, there's no way we're going to a Game 7. We might not even be going to a Game 6. So, Logan, what are your thoughts for tonight? Now, for the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard will not play tonight in Game 4. And Marcus Morris, who's been dealing with some knee issues, he's going to be a game-time decision. So what are your thoughts and predictions for tonight, Logan? I'm going to take the Phoenix Suns to get the road win. I just think that Devin Booker and Chris Paul are going to want to prove to the world that they can play elite basketball at this level. I think it's time for Chris Paul to finally get to the NBA Finals. And I just think that, the LA Clippers, these injuries, you're asking a lot out of Paul George and Reggie Jackson. Not that they can't do it, but just you have a more well-built team in the Phoenix Suns who, only lost by 14, and they're gonna come out ready to go. So, Logan, what are your thoughts on who wins the game tonight in Game 4?
Well, tonight's Game 4 battle at Staples Center, I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns as well. Because as you mentioned, I just think that the amount of offensive, high-octane ability that needs to happen for this Los Angeles Clippers team is just too high. Paul George, assuming, and this is, of course, with the assumption that the Suns superstars, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul, perform at their level.
Right.
And they don't perform in Game 3. Now, if Devin Booker and Chris Paul shoot, 5 of 20 and get 15 points like they did in Game 3, all bets are off.
Yeah.
It's anybody's game at that point.
Right.
But if all those guys play to the ability that they need, that they know they can and know they will,
yeah,
there's no reason to me why this Suns team doesn't take it out, because Paul George is going to have to drop 50. Unless a guy like Marcus Morris, Zubac, anybody, Terrence Mann has another great game.
Yeah.
They need somebody. And probably in this situation, more than one person to step up and drop 15, 20 points if they want a chance to take Game 4.
Yeah, this is going to be a big game in LA tonight. Logan and I both are taking the Suns to take that 3-1 lead. Game 4 tonight at 9 p.m. Game 5 of this series will be back in Phoenix Monday, June 28th at 9 p.m. Clippers taking on the Suns in Game 5. Well, Logan, that's one side of the bracket. Now we're going to go to the other side of the bracket, the Eastern Conference Finals. And to be quite honest with you, as I was saying last week, one of these teams we were kind of expecting to be in the conference finals, the other we were not. Now, the Hawks and the Bucks. The Hawks have been the surprise team in these playoffs. They've been terrific all year long, but you can't say that about last night's game. But first, let's go to Game 1. That was at Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee, and what a game this was, Logan. Trae Young, this may have been the best performance he's ever put on. 48 points, 11 assists, and 7 rebounds for Young, all in 41 minutes. The Hawks outscored Milwaukee 34-26 in the third quarter. There was one point, Logan, where Trae Young, I don't know if you saw it, but he did a little shimmy with his shoulder and then hit a 3, nothing but net. And that's when I knew the Hawks had this game. The Bucks did put up a very valiant effort. Giannis Antetokounmpo had 34 points in 41 minutes. Drew Holiday was the second leading scorer for Milwaukee, Logan. 33 points in 42 minutes to go along with 10 assists as well, finishing with that double-double. And the Bucks, they had actually a 7-point lead close to the game finishing, and then Atlanta goes on a run, and they close out the game 116-113, get a crucial conference finals win, their first win in a conference or division finals since 1969. That's been that long for the Atlanta Hawks, and the performance Trae Young put up in Game 1 was certainly worth the wait. However, Game 2 was a completely different story. Now, with Atlanta taking Game 1 and having a critical 1-0 lead, the Bucks came out on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders. After the first quarter, it was still pretty tight. 34-28 was the score in favor of the hometown Bucks. However, this game, Logan, let's be honest, I thought it was over midway through the second quarter. The Bucks outscore Atlanta 43-17. Yes, that's right. 43-17 was the second quarter score favoring the Milwaukee Bucks. And then at that point, Logan, the game was over at halftime. Like, let's not kid ourselves. This was just a terrible performance by the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young was the leading scorer, but he only had 15 points in 28 minutes. John Collins was not great, only 11 points in 24 minutes. Kevin Huerter, he's been playing extremely well in these playoffs. You couldn't say that about last night, only 8 points. Cam Reddish did return for Atlanta, and he looked pretty spry out there. He did have 11 points in 17 minutes. A lot of those minutes were in the fourth quarter, towards the end of the game. But, I think Cam Reddish is definitely going to be helpful for the Hawks, just another body you can throw at Giannis Antetokounmpo. But to me, Game 2 last night, Logan, was a reality check game, I think, for NBA fans, because I was very, swept up in the Hawks, and they could actually maybe go to the finals after that Game 1 win. They have all the confidence. They have shooters. Trae Young has help. Nate McMillan has done a phenomenal job coaching this team for the time he's been there this season. And then Game 2 happens last night, and then you think to yourself, yeah, right, they're also playing the Milwaukee Bucks. So, to me, I think Game 3 in Atlanta is going to be the series. I really do believe that. I think it's more of a must-win game for the Hawks than it is the Bucks, because if you think about it, if the Hawks go up 2-1, the Bucks can still win on the road in Atlanta and then come back to Milwaukee with a 2-2 series. So I think the Hawks have to get both games in Atlanta to just have a chance to beat Milwaukee, and I think Game 3 really is going to determine the series. So, Logan, I want to get your thoughts on these Eastern Conference Finals. What surprised you? And I want to get your analysis of these two games. And what do you think about Game 3 tomorrow night in Atlanta?
Well, Game 1 was definitely a battle all the way through. I want to give a lot of credit, obviously, like you mentioned, to Trae Young. He had a fantastic performance, 48 points.
Yeah.
Shot 50% from the field, 4 of 13 from deep, which isn't glamorous, but again, his field goal percentage was there. John Collins put up 15 rebounds.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. For, one of those guys that just was more of a forward than anything. It's just exactly the kind of numbers that you want to see from a guy like that.
And don't forget about 23 points as well for Collins. So he was really helping Trae Young out with the scoring. He was the second leading scorer for the Hawks in Game 1.
Efficiently as well, 11 of 16 from the field for him.
Yeah. But
the problem that I had coming from the Bucks, and again, like you mentioned, great game by Giannis and a lot of scoring from Drew Holiday. Stephen A. Smith mentioned it, and it kind of was almost a realization thing for me. It was like, he said, why did the Bucks pay Drew Holiday? Why did they get him?
Yeah. Defense.
They got him to play defense.
Yep.
He can score 50 points, but if Trae Young has 50, what's the point?
Right.
You didn't do your job. His job is to defend Trae Young and keep him. If he can keep Trae Young under 30, it's a win.
Yeah.
He did his job. He couldn't keep him under 40. He almost got to 50.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many points Drew Holiday has, because that's not his job. His job is not to shoot.
Right.
And, oh my Lord, Chris Middleton has been abysmal this past week. He's been awful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Game 7 in Brooklyn, only 23 points on 9 of 26. The first two games in Atlanta, against Atlanta, in Milwaukee,
right,
he's hit a combined 2 3-pointers and has 30 points between the two games.
Yeah, 15 points in Game 1. 15 points in Game 1.
That is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And if you ask me about the series and whatnot, if Chris Middleton doesn't play better, this series is going to go 6 or 7 games, guaranteed.
Do you think think if Chris Middleton doesn't play well in this series that the Bucks can still get out of it?
Yeah, I think it's very possible that the Bucks will still get out of the series just off of the back of Giannis. And Drew Holiday will have to play better defense.
Yeah.
Two things happen. Let me tell you, this is the only chance to me, and I've been betting against the Hawks all season long, and it hasn't worked out for me yet. So I'm going to put a little safety net for myself. If Drew Holiday doesn't play defense the way Drew Holiday can, and Chris Middleton doesn't score the way Chris Middleton can, that is the only scenario in which the Hawks win this series, and they win it in 7.
Yeah.
Now, the Bucks, Game 2, you mentioned, came out on firing on all cylinders. They went to work.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working, right? And the game was on the TV, and I was looking at the TV, and it was like 9-3 or whatever in the first quarter. And
right.
I don't know, I was busy for about an hour. I looked over at the TV, and it was like, they were up by like 40.
Yeah, the game was over at halftime.
In the world, it's just like out of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a fantastic run by the Bucks, but honestly, part of me just kind of looks at it like the Hawks just didn't shoot well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look across the board, nobody that took more than 5 shots, almost nobody that took more than 5 shots shot over 50% from the field.
Yeah, and the Hawks also, they had 19 turnovers, and so, they were giving up the ball left and right, so it's not like they were, they were hurting themselves as well.
As well as assists. They had 13.
Yeah.
I mean, the lack of ball movement in this game is probably what hurt them the most, just as much as turnovers and a lack of defense against Giannis.
Right.
So, this one, I look at it, like I said, from 2 points of view. Bad defense by the Hawks, and just taking advantage of awful defense and awful offense on the Bucks side. So, I mean, Game 3, I like I said earlier, if Drew Holiday plays defense, the Hawks will lose this game.
Okay.
The Bucks are going to go up 2-1. I don't know if I would call it a deciding game just yet.
Okay.
Just because of the fact we saw what happened in the Philadelphia series.
Yeah, that is true.
1, and Philadelphia near blow them out in 2 straight games, beating them by 16 and then 18.
Right.
And then the Hawks came back and won 2 in a row by 1 point. But a win is a win.
But so, do you also think, Logan, to me, the 76ers aren't the Milwaukee Bucks. I think Milwaukee was the biggest threat to beat the Nets in the playoffs this year. They obviously beat the Nets, who were hobbled. But when you look at, the Bucks, I just think that they're overall a better shooting team. And this is a team, aside from Giannis, you don't really have to worry about them at the free throw line. Sixers, you don't have to play hack a Giannis as much as you had to play with Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers. So I think when the Bucks, when they turn it on in terms of shooting, they're honestly unstoppable. Then you have Giannis going to the basket. You have Brook Lopez, who doesn't really play that traditional center role. So it really is a matter of, can the Hawks slow down the momentum in Game 3? Do you believe that they can do that?
I do agree with you there. I think the Bucks are a better team than the Philadelphia 76ers, but here's the issue that you run into. I believe, looking at the games, the Bucks are compromised with the lack of production from Chris Middleton.
Okay.
The fact that Chris Middleton is not playing the level that he is, to me, minus Chris Middleton's good performing, the Sixers and the Bucks are an even team.
Right.
If you think about it. Because I would compare Joel Embiid to Giannis. I think Ben Simmons, from a defensive aspect, is better than Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
And with Chris Middleton compromised offensively, you're running out of options. There's a lot less room for mistakes. The Bucks, in my opinion, if Chris Middleton doesn't start picking it up, all it takes is one of those stars to have a bad game, whether it be Giannis, Drew Holiday, whether it be Brook Lopez shooting 0 for 15 or something like that. All that needs to happen is one of those things, and they're going to lose the game because Chris Middleton has not performed in this past week and a half. And
Chris Middleton is he's their best shooter. To me, he's their best one-on-one isolation player when just look in terms of skills and handling the ball. So we'll see. This is going to be a great matchup tomorrow from the State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Bucks taking on the Hawks. Game 3 of this series will be tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We will see who takes that commanding and critical 2-1 game lead tomorrow, 8:30 from the State Farm Arena. Bucks going up against the Hawks. Now, Logan, that does not conclude our NBA news yet. We concluded our NBA playoff discussion, but now I want to talk about some outside news going on in the NBA right now, and we have a few coaching hires to report. first, let's start with Rick Carlisle, who's been the coach of the Dallas Mavericks for the majority of his coaching career. He stepped down as head coach of the Mavericks after their playoff series loss to the LA Clippers, and he has now taken a job with the Indiana Pacers. This has been an organization that he is very fond of and has some great experiences with. He coached this team back in 2004 when they had all those great battles with the Pistons. So he's returning to Indiana. This is a place that he's comfortable with. He knows very well. And, the Pacers, they definitely have some quality pieces moving forward. You're talking about a guy in Domantas Sabonis. You have Karis LeVert, who's a great scorer. Malcolm Brogdon has game, and I think he is a great point guard for this team, can be a great leader. Miles Turner, was injured for the play-in game, but this guy, when he's playing, he can be the most dominant guy on the court if he wants. And T.J. Warren, you can never count him out. He's always a great scorer. And they've got some other guys coming off the bench as well. O'Shea Brissett had a breakout play-in tournament and overall season. Doug McDermott can still shoot the three. You've got T.J. McConnell, a very pestery defender. Don't forget about Justin Holiday either, Drew Holiday's brother, and Aaron Holiday. So you've got guys, Jeremy Lamb coming off the bench too. So this is a team who definitely have some promise. So Logan, how do you feel about Rick Carlisle taking this job with the Pacers?
I think it's going to be a huge addition for the Pacers. I think he's going to do a really great job. I think he did a good job in Dallas. I just don't think the team was put together correctly. I think Kristaps Porzingis has way underperformed in Dallas.
Absolutely.
Since he got there.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the biggest reasons that it seemed Carlisle hadn't done a great job. But, look at it like this. Carlisle brought this team to 7 games with an underdeveloped Luka Doncic. And Doncic was great in the bubble.
Right.
He was amazing. But he wasn't Luka Doncic. He wasn't that guy just yet. He was close, but he wasn't that guy. And Carlisle was able to lead that team 7 games against a Clippers team who, any way you want to look at it, they might have blown a 3-1 series lead, whatnot, but that was a good Clippers team. They still had Kawhi. You could call playoff P all you want, but that dude could go from 4 points in Game 6 to 40 in Game 7. Because it's Paul George.
Right.
But he did a great job in Dallas, and I'm really, really excited to see what he does with an even younger group in Indiana, because Doncic is young, he's a star. They have a lot of younger guys there, but a lot of their role players were veterans in Dallas. I'm interested to see his ability to develop the younger guys, like you mentioned, O'Shea Brissett, and guys all, even Malcolm Brogdon,
right,
the younger guard. I think he's taken huge steps since leaving Milwaukee, but I think he's still 1 or 2 years away from being that next level point guard that Indiana is going to need him to be in order to compete.
And this is going to be interesting to see how the Pacers compete in the Eastern Conference, because for the last couple of years they've been knocking on the doorstep, but they've just never been able to make that breakthrough run. They fired Nate McMillan. Now they got rid of Nate Bjorkgren. We'll see how this hiring of Rick Carlisle works. Certainly going to be interested to see what the Pacers can do with this squad moving forward. And speaking of Rick Carlisle leaving Dallas, well, Dallas has their vacant spot filled now with Jason Kidd, who was a former assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, now will be at the helm in Dallas coaching Luka Doncic. So, Logan, this is a team who fell to the LA Clippers in 7 games. How do you like this move of Jason Kidd going forward, and what are your expectations now for the Mavericks with the hiring of Jason Kidd?
Well, I do think Jason Kidd did a really good job in Milwaukee. I think that Jason Kidd is going to be, again, similar to like Carlisle was in Indiana. I think he's going to be an upgrade. I think Carlisle had, like I said earlier, he did a great job, but I think his time in Dallas was up, and I think it's time to bring in a coach who could potentially, tell Luka about, have the experience.
Right.
The fact, I know from personal experience that if a coach has experience in doing the job that I know I have to do, it's a lot easier to listen to him.
Right.
Jason Kidd is a Hall of Fame point guard.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guard that Luka Doncic aspires to be, obviously. Everybody that is in the NBA wants to be in the Hall of Fame. But Luka Doncic truly has that feeling that Jason Kidd, of all people, will have the best opportunity, in my opinion, to truly unleash in Luka Doncic and truly just take him to that another level. And I know he's already one of the best in the NBA right now. I would put him top 5 if you ask me. But I think that there's a really good chance that Jason Kidd is going to find a way to make him even better than he is already, whether that be better free throw shooting, better ability to pass, facilitating, whatever it ends up being, defensively. I think Jason Kidd is the guy that is going to be able to unleash that ceiling for Luka Doncic because he's been there before.
And where do you, when we talk about the Mavericks here real quick, we'll finish it up on them. With this hiring of Jason Kidd, where do you expect the Mavericks to finish in terms of standings next season in the Western Conference?
Well, to me, standings-wise, they could be anywhere from a 6th seed to a top 3 seed in the Western Conference.
Okay.
This is a very unpredictable team, if you ask me. I think they've got the star power to perform in the regular season. They've got Luka, and I know I was just bashing Kristaps, but he still is a fringe all-star level player. I think that role-wise, this is a relatively deep team. Tim Hardaway is a talent. Jalen Brunson's a really good point guard out of Villanova. They've got a lot of really good young guys on that team. And I think this, like I said, anywhere from the 6th seed to the 3rd seed. But come postseason time, I expect this to be a team that might be making their first trip to the Western Conference Finals since Dirk.
Yeah,
because of the simple fact that Luka Doncic performs in big moments. He gets it done game in, game out. I believe he averaged 41 points in closeout games this postseason.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was ridiculous.
But they were all losses, though.
Booker has performed.
But you have to think of all the closeout games were losses. So at the end of the day, yeah, you can put up the numbers, Logan, but you have to get the results as well. So is that something that you're concerned about?
And I think the results will come with Jason Kidd as the head coach. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the ceiling that I'm talking about, numbers-wise, Luka Doncic is already looking like one of the best in the NBA, if not the best. He's a walking triple-double. But instead of being Russell Westbrook, who couldn't shoot a three-pointer to save his life 3 years ago, Luka Doncic can hit it from half court. Now, I think the ceiling that I'm mentioning with Jason Kidd is a winning. Now you have to have that mentality of not only am I going to go out and drop buckets, I'm going to put my team in the best position to win basketball games.
Right.
So in my opinion, assuming Jason Kidd does his job and Luka Doncic takes his advice and does his job, I see this Dallas Mavericks team as a potential Western Conference Finals competitor.
Yeah.
Come season.
This will definitely be a terrific leap for the Mavericks. We'll see how Luka Doncic and the crew adapt to the new ways of Jason Kidd and what his strategies will be. One more coaching discussion I want to get to with you, Logan. We're going to go to the Boston Celtics. They hired Brooklyn Nets assistant coach Ime Udoka. Now, Udoka had experience in San Antonio under Greg Popovich with the Spurs. He did a great job coaching with Steve Nash during his time in Brooklyn. So this is a guy who has a lot of experience, and he's young as well. He is 43. He's only 43 years old, so he's not a super old guy. He's a guy who can relate to these young players that the Celtics have. And with guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they traded Kemba Walker away to Oklahoma City. They got Al Horford back. Evan Fournier still on the team. You have Tristan Thompson, Robert Williams, Marcus Smart. So, you still have the talent and you have the pieces. So, Logan, with this signing of Ime Udoka, how do you feel about the Celtics moving forward, especially the fact that Kemba Walker is no longer a member of the roster?
Well, I'm going to talk from the point of Udoka for a second, and I think that this is one of the best jobs that you could possibly walk into in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a little bit of bias, but if you think about it, you've got two guys, 23 and 24, already averaging almost 24 and 28 points a game.
Yeah.
One of them is on a 5-year contract, so he's locked in, and that's a guy that is going to be a future MVP in the NBA, in Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those jobs that head coaches are just like, I want to work there. And maybe the atmosphere isn't the best, but the team is absolutely perfectly built to withstand the Eastern Conference if they can add a couple more pieces. I think that the Celtics are definitely helped by this. You were mentioning his experience. He also got a chance to work in the World Cup a few years ago.
Yeah, with Marcus Smart and all those guys. Yeah,
with the U.S. team, and I've heard that a lot of the Celtics guys spoke very highly of him at the time. So I think that they're very, very excited to have him. I think he's excited to be there, and I think that that's going to be a very, very good system changer.
Yeah.
In favor of Boston. And once again, just like I said earlier at the beginning of the season, this Boston team has potential. They have the chance to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They have a chance to go and compete for a championship. They just need the personnel. They have the personnel right now. I think adding Udoka helps that personnel, and I think the atmosphere is going to change entirely. And as everybody knows, atmosphere is just as important as having the right pieces in a championship team.
And finally, Logan, I'm sorry to kind of give this news to you on the fly, but it looks like this weekend the Portland Trailblazers, if they've not done so already, will be wrapping up a deal with Chauncey Billups, who is right now an assistant coach with the LA Clippers. Billups will be in the head coaching role for the Portland Trailblazers. Logan, just quick thoughts on this. With the roster, you've got Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. You certainly have pieces. How do you think that Chauncey Billups will help this team moving forward?
I think similarly that I mentioned for Dallas, Jason Kidd, I think Chauncey Billups will bring a different atmosphere and a different way of taking the pressure off of Damian Lillard. I think that's one of the biggest problems that Terry Stotts couldn't do in Portland, was take the pressure off of Damian Lillard offensively. I think Chauncey Billups, being the fantastic Hall of Fame level point guard that he was for the Pistons, for the Clippers, and all those teams back in the day, I think he will understand that you cannot have this point guard being the only offensive option that at your disposal.
Yeah.
So I think he will find a way to either add more personnel or get some of these younger guys, Nasir Little and Fernie Simons, some of those younger guards and forwards to step up and start adding offensively and take some of the pressure off of Damian Lillard.
Yeah, absolutely. So that'll be another great, interesting team to watch this upcoming season, the Portland Trailblazers, and how Chauncey Billups kind of assigns the duties of certain guys. What's CJ McCollum going to do? What's Carmelo Anthony going to do? Obviously, how is Damian Lillard going to be utilized now moving forward with the Trailblazers? And now, final slice of NBA news here, Logan. We're going to talk about the NBA Draft Lottery, which took place this past Tuesday. So the Cleveland Cavaliers get the third overall pick in this year's NBA Draft. The Detroit Pistons winning the lottery with the first pick. Houston will be receiving the second pick. So let's talk about the Cavs and now their selection with the third overall pick. Some of the NBA draft prospects in this year, Logan, and we'll talk about this closer to July as well. You're talking about Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, Scotty Barnes, Davion Mitchell out of Baylor. And so, Logan, when you look at this Cavs roster, what are your thoughts of what the Cavs need to select? Because the third pick is nothing to sniff at. So what do the Cavs need in order to make the most out of their third pick?
I think, ideally, if he's still available, one of two people I'm going to give you three. I'll give you two. So I think Jalen Green is one of them if he's still available. He's one of the most dominant offensive forces that I've seen come out of the G League in a long time. He is a 6'6", I believe, two guard, who I think, based on his size and ability defensively, will be able to play the three. I think the Cavs really desperately need another scorer that can put up 25, 26 points a game through his career, and I think that the Cavs could desperately use a guy like Jalen Green. So he's one of the options. And the other one that I wanted to mention was Jonathan Kuminga. Another G League Ignite guy who's going to come. I believe he's 6'9", 6'10", I think he's a power forward level guy.
Yes.
He can shoot. He can extend the floor, and he's going to be a fantastic prospect that the Cavaliers could definitely use based on his abilities offensively and defensively. His length could be very useful guarding the guys like Kevin Durant, the Giannis's of the world, guys like that. I think another guy that the Cavs could definitely consider is a guy like Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a big pick for the Cavs. You know, they're obviously in rebuild mode, but this is going to be a huge step forward if they can capitalize on the decision that they make. The NBA draft itself will be July 29th, so we still have a few weeks to go, a little over a month, actually. So Logan and I will break down that for you once we get the news of who the Cavs select, and that'll be a great topic to discuss once the draft passes by. But let's stick to basketball for a little longer here, Logan. Let's talk about the WNBA. And when we look at the standings, Logan, the Connecticut Sun, they are 5-5 in their last 10 games. They just won their most recent game, but they're still atop the Eastern Conference with a record of 9-5. The Chicago Sky, after a rough start to the season, now Candace Parker is back, and they have been fantastic. They've been the best team in the WNBA these last couple of weeks. They've won 7 in a row. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games, and they have a record of 9-7 now after starting out the season just 2-7. And the Washington Mystics, they're at 7-7 in third place in the conference. When we look at the Western Conference, Logan, the Seattle Storm have the best record in the WNBA, and 12 wins, 3 losses for them. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. The Las Vegas Aces, 10 wins, 4 losses. The Seattle Storm and Aces are the only 2 teams in the WNBA, Logan, with at least 10 wins. Las Vegas, despite losing their most recent game, are still 10-4, 8-2 in their last 10 games. The Minnesota Lynx are 7-7. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games, and they've won 2 in a row. When we look at stats in the WNBA, points per game, leader in that category is Tina Charles of the Washington Mystics, averaging about 25 points per game. Jonquel Jones and Breanna Stewart finish second and third, respectively. Jones of the Connecticut Sun finishing at around 22 points per game, with Breanna Stewart of the Seattle Storm finishing with about 21 points per game. Jonquel Jones is second in points per game, and leads the league in rebounds per game with about 10 per game. Brittany Griner of the Phoenix Mercury also leading, second place in rebounds per game with about 10. We look at assists per game. Chicago Sky player Courtney Vandersloot with about 8 to 9 assists per game. Blocks per game, Brittany Griner leads that category with about 2 per game. So, Logan, we were talking about Candace Parker, who's returned to the Chicago Sky, and, how she's basically re-energized the team. You can never count out Sue Bird. She's been terrific for all of her career. Breanna Stewart is just with that Achilles injury. She's come back, and here she is averaging 21 points per game in the WNBA. So, Logan, I want to ask you this. Who is your top candidate thus far in the WNBA for the Most Valuable Player award?
Well, right now, my leader for the MVP is, unfortunately, I got to go with Breanna Stewart. I know she's been up there and fantastic for years now, but, just come on. Unbelievable numbers, 21 points a game, 10 rebounds. She might be the best forward in the WNBA right now. Jonquel Jones having a great year as well, but Breanna Stewart has her team at 12-3.
Yeah.
She has just been amazing this season. She's like running away with it. Jonquel Jones is right there. I'm not even going to go far with that. But the problem with the Connecticut Sun is they are in the Eastern Conference, a weaker Eastern Conference compared to the West. Now, if Jonquel Jones continues to lead her team and continue her scoring numbers, and Connecticut continues to win, we might be having a different conversation in 2 weeks, but right now, Breanna Stewart is my MVP for the WNBA right now.
And Logan, I want to talk about the New York Liberty a little bit as well. Right now, they're in 4th place in the Eastern Conference with 7 wins and 8 losses. They've lost their last 2 games. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. And, Sabrina Ionescu has been one of the top prospects in the WNBA. She's probably going to be the franchise for the New York Liberty moving forward. With that being said, are you disappointed in how the New York Liberty have looked so far this season, or do you think that, they're still figuring all of it out and they'll eventually be better than what the record says right now?
Well, I mean, this is a young team, like you mentioned. Sabrina Ionescu is one of the best prospects to come out of Oregon in a long time for the WNBA, and I think that it's worth mentioning that Natasha Howard has only played 2 games this season.
Right.
She is averaging almost 15 points a game in those 2 games. She's averaging, of course, only in 2 games, 66% from three-point land. I mean, this is a really young team that has a lot of potential. I think, it's young. There's not a lot of consistency, and that happens in young teams. They're also 7-8.
Right.
So it's not like the Indiana, and they're, 1-15 for crying out loud, and they're 0-10 in their last 10. This is a team who might be in a downward trend, but they're still right there in the conversation for those top hitters in the Eastern Conference. Yeah,
and this is going to be, obviously the season is still very much in the grind of it right now. So we still have a while to determine those playoff seedings and everything like that. But the upcoming schedule in the WNBA today, Mystics going up against the Wings today at 1 o'clock p.m. The Liberty will be going up against the Dream today at 7 p.m. And then tomorrow we have 3 games for you in the WNBA. The Sky going up against the Sun tomorrow at 2 o'clock. The Storm will be going up against the Aces. That'll be a great game. The 2 best teams in the WNBA facing each other tomorrow at 4 p.m., and then our final game for tomorrow will be the LA Sparks going up against the Phoenix Mercury. That'll be at 6 p.m. And Logan, final topic of discussion for today, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Indians, who you could say may have underperformed a little bit in their road trip thus far. So the Indians had 2 road games in Chicago against the Cubs, and right now they've completed 2 games in Minnesota against the Twins out of 4. And right now the Indians 2-2 in their last 4 games, Logan. The Indians this past Monday with a big win over the Cubs 4-0, and then they lost to the Cubs 7-1 this past Tuesday, despite pitcher Eli Morgan having 9 strikeouts in that 7-1 loss against the Chicago Cubs on Tuesday. The Indians bounced back this past Thursday in Minnesota against the Twins, winning 4-1, but then they fall to Minnesota in a tight game yesterday, 8-7. So it seems like, once again, Logan, in the losses, the Indians are giving up a lot of runs, and in the wins, they're much tighter, much closer games. So I feel like we have those problems coming up again, where the Indians just have that one inning where everything just completely collapses. And, last night it was the 3rd inning. They gave up 4 runs alone in that 3rd inning, Logan, to the Minnesota Twins. So, we can talk about Eli Morgan with the 9 strikeouts, but also the Indians are only 2-2 in their last 4 games. So this week, Logan, what's been the bigger story to you? Is it how Eli Morgan's been performing, or the results the Indians have been getting?
Well, I think as a team, it's results. I mean, Eli Morgan has been really, really good so far, I think, for being as young as he is and as talented as he could be. I think he's played pretty well. But one of the things that I have lacked to mention when talking about the Indians recently is I've been mentioning, obviously, a lot of inconsistency with the bat. But more than that, it's timely batting, right? In the game against Minnesota last night, they lost by 1 run. And they did score in the 9th, but it was a homer by Josh Naylor, and that was that.
Right.
To me, time-wise, you have to know when to get it going. You've got to be able to hit with runners in scoring position. You've got to get guys on, and they just haven't been doing that. Their batting average runners in scoring position has lacked all season long, and that's one of the biggest reasons that they haven't been able to pull games away late.
Right.
From a pitching standpoint, I honestly don't think they've done an awful job this past week.
Yeah, no.
You mentioned the 4 games. The only game that they gave up more than 1 run in is last night.
Yeah.
They gave up they pitched a shutout on Monday. Only gave up 7 on Tuesday. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this wrong.
Oh, no
7 on Tuesday, but even then, Eli Morgan did a great job going into the 6th.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the Cubs, once again, like you mentioned, that single inning just shut it down.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest, like you mentioned, inconsistencies. Pitching, runner in scoring position, it just doesn't work out for the Indians, and they definitely have to figure it out, because if they don't, this is not a team that will go to the postseason with confidence and in a good position to possibly compete.
And you're talking about position, Logan. Right now, the Indians only 2 games behind the Chicago White Sox for that Central Division crown. And Chicago, the White Sox have been reeling a little bit. They're only 3-7 in their last 10 games. They're 44-31 thus far. The Indians have a record of 41 wins and 32 losses. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games, Logan. And upcoming matches for them, they've got 2 more games in Minneapolis against the Twins, and then they head home to Progressive Field in downtown Cleveland for 3 games against the Tigers, and then they're going up against the Houston Astros, who are currently, they're looking like the best team in baseball right now. I mean, they have been absolutely terrific. They have the best record the last 10 games for any team in Major League Baseball. They're 10-0, they're 47-28, and they are looking dominant. So those games against Detroit, these last 2 games against Minnesota and these next 3 games against Detroit are going to be pivotal, Logan, because let's face it, with how well Houston's been playing, they have 4 games against the Indians at Progressive Field, and I don't think we can truly say that the Indians are going to win all of them. I think the Indians might be lucky to get 2 of them. So these games against Minnesota and Detroit are going to be pretty critical in my estimation. What are your thoughts on the Indians' upcoming schedule, Logan? And what do you think they need to bring against the Astros in order to have a chance to compete with the best team in baseball right now?
I think the pitching needs to be fantastic, and the bats need to work as well. And I know that sounds kind of basic, but I mean, you're looking at the best offense in baseball right now with the Astros.
Right.
Jose Altuve had a great year. He's continuing to just get the bat on the ball, and he's done amazing with that. Obviously, Carlos Correa doing his job as well. This is just one of those teams that once they get on a run, they don't stop rolling. It's like a ball. You push it, and it just keeps rolling. It's like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you just get mowed down. So this has got to be one of those games you cannot, if you give up a run, fine, shut it down after that. This is not a team that you can allow them to string together runs, because they will do that. This is one of those teams, you gave up 4 runs in an inning in the 5th inning against the Cubs. You cannot do that.
Right.
Because they won't make it 4, they'll double it and make it 8.
Yeah.
You cannot do that against the team, because it is just one of those teams that will get a roll and they will fire away quickly and effortlessly. 1 minute you'll be up 3 and you'll be down 6 the next. You've got to be able to consistently put up numbers, and Francona especially cannot be a little shy to put in his reliever early, because you've got to make sure you got a fresh arm out there as well.
Yeah, and Indians, these are going to be some pretty monumental games for them, especially for those standings. As I mentioned, 2 more games against Minnesota, a 3-game home series against the Detroit Tigers, and then at Progressive Field, the Indians will have 4 more home games against the Houston Astros before heading back out on the road to Tampa Bay for matchups with the Rays. And Logan, that concludes our latest edition of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. Really appreciate having you on every week. You do a terrific job. Thank you so much for analyzing the conference finals with me. I really loved your takes and your breakdowns of all the new NBA coaching hires. We had some great discussion on the WNBA. Super excited to see how all the standings in the league play out. And then thanks a lot for another terrific analysis of the Indians this past week. Really appreciate you being on the show. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure, Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Once again, very special thanks to Logan Purcell for joining me and having another successful episode of the podcast. Well, guess what? There's more where that came from, actually. There are more episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show. There's more work I have for you to listen to and to see. And we get started on NordoniaHills.news. If you are on NordoniaHills.news, then you can just go to the Contributors tab. Go to that Contributors tab, find my name. It's one of the first names listed. It's Darius Sethna, spelled Darayussethna. Once you click on my name in that Contributors tab, you will be taken to the page of all of my work. That's right. Previous episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show, articles I've written, and I actually did some sports breaks on live radio with WNBA Akron host Christopher Dominic. We talked about sports mostly, and sports here in Northeast Ohio and all over the country as well. So make sure you take a listen to those. I also, if you keep scrolling down, have basketball game play-by-play broadcast of the Nordonia High School boys varsity basketball team. They had a terrific roster and some great games this year. You're not going to want to miss out on watching those play-by-play games if you didn't see them in the season. Also, as I mentioned, some articles you can read as well. I'm also on Twitter. That's right. You can type in my Twitter handle, which is @Nordonia Sports, or just type in my name, Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you type in my name or my user or my Twitter handle in this in the Twitter search bar, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, not Spotify, but the Twitter search bar, you'll be able to see all my work on Twitter as well. Links to the podcast episodes, links to the articles, links to everything on my page on NordoniaHills.news. So make sure you check out my Twitter page as well. I'm also very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show is on YouTube. That's right. If you're on YouTube, just make sure you go to the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page, and all of my episodes for the podcast are on that page for you to listen to as well. And last but certainly not least, it's now finally time to talk about Spotify, and I'm very proud to announce that the Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify. That's right. No matter where you go, you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. Just type in my name in the Spotify search bar, Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and from there you will be able to access all of my work, my podcast episodes, and some of the sports breaks I've done on live radio as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for your time and listening to Logan and I break down the latest news in sports. Really appreciate your time this week. Once again, special thanks to Logan Purcell again for his terrific work. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next time for another edition of the podcast. Until then, take care, enjoy the great weather outside, and have a wonderful week. Thank you.